Hi, everyone. I'm Taylor Combaluzier, a mining analyst at Red Cloud Securities. This session of our Oktoberfest Fall Mining Showcase will feature World Copper Limited. World Copper is a copper-focused exploration company operating within Chile at its Escalones and Cristal projects. It has also signed a definitive agreement to acquire Cordero Resources and the Zonia Copper-Oxide project in Arizona. From the company, we have with us Nolan Peterson, who's the CEO. Uh, Apologize in advance for him because he has laryngitis, so cut him a bit of slack with the presentation today. I'll note that if any attendees have Q&A questions, to submit them using the link, and we'll get to them at the end of the presentation. And with that, I'll turn it over to Nolan to walk you through the story.
Thank you, Taylor. Greetings, everybody, and thank you for signing in. I only have 10 minutes to present, so I will move very quickly through an update of the company. I'll skip over a lot of things that you can talk about with me in a one-on-one or by attending our website. So the company World Copper, we have two assets in Chile. I'll focus on our flagship asset at the moment, which is Escalones. The Escalones project is one we see great potential for a development at and great potential for expansion through exploration. It is 100 kilometers southeast of Santiago, 35 kilometers east of El Teniente, and it's in an area of good infrastructure that will support future mine development. To date, 25,000 meters has been drilled on the Escalones package. Everything within that orange circle there you see in our claims block. And immediately to the south of that, we have a exploration target, which we call the Mancha Amarilla. To the northeast, we have three other targets that have the potential to be copper porphyry deposits in their own right. 2 months ago, we put out an updated resource statement for the Escalones project, which produced a resource of 426 million tons, grading at 0.37% with a strip ratio of under 1 as a copper oxide project. Prior to this project was viewed as a sulphide project, which would, with the similar tonnage that I just described, about 430 million tons, grading at 0.4% copper equivalent, would have been unviable as a sulphide project. It would have needed to become 2 to 3 times larger. As an oxide project, we see a path for development now because of the large scale and the relatively high grades that make this a compelling story. Over the last year, we've done work which has allowed us to access this deposit as an oxide and as a heap leach. And that is what allows us to see this path forward now. As an oxide heap leach, very briefly, compared to sulfide flotation, oxide heap leach projects are much simpler to get off the ground. They're cleaner. They are more economic. They have higher operating margins. They lower initial capital. They consume 3 to 4 times less water per pound of copper produced. They don't require a tailings storage facility, and they have a greatly accelerated permitting path. And that's why we see this project having a great potential now as an oxide. I have some comparable projects to help you understand the benchmark. These are projects that are in operations in Chile at the moment. Their tonnages and grades, you can see how our 426 million tons, grading at 0.37% copper, stands up compared to these mines that are in operations held by major players at the moment. As sulfide projects at these tons and grades, none of these projects would be in operation. They would not be viable based on their scale. So that's an idea of now what being an oxide project allows Escalones to do. We also have a benchmark, which I like to demonstrate. This is one of our peers in Chile. It's Marimaca. It's a company that is has completed a preliminary economic assessment as of last year. Their mine plan calls for 131 million tons, grading at 0.47%. You can see how our tons compare. You can see the market cap or the pre-tax NPV at $3.15 per pound that they produced, 757 million. We have now started a preliminary economic assessment for our project as an oxide project, and that number will be delivered within the first quarter of next year, and I am anticipating early in Q1 next year. You can see how our market caps compare, and that's where we believe there's a gap in undervalued, that's where we believe there's a gap to fill and where World Copper is undervalued in the market. We also have, as I mentioned, the Mancha Amarilla lithocap expansion target to the south of the main resource. This is our belief, is this is a continuation of the main deposit. You can see it on the left there, and in the foreground, the existing resource. As a continuation, our goal with a drill program later this year is to prove that it is one large deposit, and this has the potential to add another 300 to 400 million tons, essentially doubling this resource in size and scale, which would make this an absolutely phenomenal project. I want to leave you with this slide just to show you where Escalones sits now as a copper oxide project in Chile. It is the largest new copper oxide project by copper contained as it sits right now. And you can see how it compares to companies like Marimaca, other companies like Codelco and KGHM with their oxide projects. We are larger than all of them. And with a doubling of this resource that we anticipate, we have the potential to be literally off this chart as presented. As Taylor mentioned, we also recently signed a definitive agreement to merge with Cardero Resources and bring the Zonia copper oxide project into our portfolio as well. Zonia lies in Arizona. This is a project that was in operations historically, and we will look at the options to bring it into development and operations again. Here's some pictures of the existing infrastructure, including the pit at the bottom that has already been pre-stripped, which lowers initial capital costs. This deposit has had 50,000 meters of drilling done on it to date, as well as a preliminary economic assessment. The interesting thing about that preliminary economic assessment is that it constrained the pit to a size that would fit on land that could be permitted within 3 to 4 years, so-called private patented land in Arizona. This development option exists and will continue to exist for this project, but we also see the potential to expand the resource to its full potential by removing that constraint, and that would add easily 30 to 40% more tons to this resource right then and there. And we will be looking at that option as well as potentially advancing to a pre-feasibility study in the near future. To the northeast, we have an expansion target that has not had any activity done on it over historically, that we believe has the ability to add 300 to 500 million tons to this deposit and change the entire nature of this project. So we are picking up this project for under $10 million, all shares, through a 60-40 share transaction with Cardero Resources. We will go forward as a joint entity. We believe that for picking this up for under $10 million, the value here is exceptional based on the PEA that was carried out 3 years ago, as I mentioned, at $3 copper. This is $198 million initial capital with $192 million NPV. At a closer to $4 copper, it's $450 million after tax NPV with a first year free cash flow of $150 million. If we expand the resource and we use a higher copper price, you can see how the value rapidly increases and why this is such a good acquisition. Recently, the company World Copper has started trading in the United States on the OTCQB market. And just this week, we became DTC eligible, which will increase our liquidity as we ramp up our marketing activities in the US and advance our projects. It's a great time to invest with us, and we would love to have more people involved. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask them.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Nolan. So now we'll turn to the Q&A portion of the presentation session. So please submit them using the Q&A link. So to start off, a little bit on the exploration potential at the Mancha Maria.
That's right.
What kind of sampling results have you been getting there lately, and where has that helped you kind of vector in on where you could do some drilling in the future?
Yes, Taylor, thank you. That's a good thing that I didn't really have time to address in the presentation. We put out we've done some surface sampling earlier this year. That'll help us target our drill holes in the program that we have planned. As you mentioned, we had some great results, specifically from the Skarn deposit. These are surface results. So this is just surface sampling. We had grades of 0.62, 0.92. We even had one result at 17.4% copper, which signifies native copper lying at the surface of this deposit. There is, we double and triple check that number to verify it, and it stood up. There's certainly work that needs to be required to understand this and other numbers, but it's a great indication of the high grade potential of the skarn. The skarn typically tends to be a higher grade ore than the normal porphyry material. So as we beef out the skarn, as I mentioned on the, we have the potential to double with the Mancha Maria, but the skarn itself is on the flanks and has the ability to add 40 to 80 million additional tons of ore. And that would be at what we would think is a little bit of a higher grade, or potentially a much higher grade, which would help to increase the grade overall for this project. So that is something that has given us good optimistic drill targets for the future.
Great. Okay. And in terms of for the planned drilling in the future, how's the permitting coming along for that program?
Yeah, so the permits are in process right now. We're working with our team in South America, and Chile is working through that. We are answering the questions that have come back from the regulatory agencies. They've asked for, the normal flora and fauna studies, which we're carrying out, as well as we're building community relations to help them understand the benefits of exploration and development. And those are going very well as well. So we anticipate no issues getting our permit and allowing us to drill later this year.
Great. Okay. And and then still sticking in Chile, there's been some kind of changes or proposals at the in the administrative realm in terms of taxes and royalties. Obviously, that would impact the producing companies the most. Is there any impact that would be felt kind of by the smaller players in Chile at this point?
Well, certainly it would have an impact if there's any, if it turns off certain investors to the market in the long term. But for us, immediately, it has no impact. We're at least a few years away from production. But with that said, I do believe that we are monitoring the situation very closely, and I do believe that from initial proposal to now, the proposal has already been watered down substantially. And as you would expect it, as it moves up the levels of government, sober second thought, as it were, starts to dilute the effects, and negotiation and compromise and back and forth. So we've started to see some of that. Obviously, at the end of the day, there will be slight increases in royalties, as you mentioned, as well as potentially other issues that come up, but they are not as much as initially anticipated, and they are muted. And it's just other things that need to be worked through. And you're starting to see these in other jurisdictions as well. So it's not an anomalous to Chile. Chile remains a great mining jurisdiction and very supportive of mining, and we are happy to be in the region as well.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, Chile is a mining country.
Yeah.
So that's my thing to keep in mind. Okay. So we have a question here wondering, it's a little bit of a geology one. How did the sulfide deposit evolve to an oxide one? Are there different mineralized zones found, or new metallurgy, etc.?
Yeah, so we carried out so the previous holders of the property, there is a gold and silver credit on this property as a sulphide sulphide flotation project. So they were trying to understand the best way to extract copper, gold, silver, and even gallium. And so that led them down a path of basically treating this deposit as a single large ore body and subjecting it to test work. What we have done is focused only on the oxide layer. So, there's the sulphide, which is below the transition material as you get close to the Earth's surface, and then the sulfides, which are oxidized. The sulfide cap at Escalones is quite large, which has allowed it to produce the tonnages that we see. So we focused only on copper extraction to determine the heap leachability of the project, and we got 71% over the last year through sequential leach tests, which have given us the ability to produce the resource statement that I mentioned, the 426 million tons of leachable oxide material. That's really the focus and the thinking that allowed us to see something that others had overlooked or had chased down different paths. And that's a testament to the strength of the team that we're assembling at World Copper and the assets that we're picking up. We look to do the same thing at Zonia as well, to see development paths and options that others are a little blind to be honest. So thank you. Thank you for the question.
Perfect. So with that, we are right out of time. So thank you very much, Nolan, for presenting World Copper to us this afternoon.
Thank you, Taylor.